Hey guys, we're live, I believe. We have a lot to talk about today. That includes the big Democratic Memo release on Saturday.
Yeah, that was really some big news. We also have some more stuff to talk about concerning Stoneman Douglas, some controversial comments made by President Trump, and there's a few other small little things, and we'll be sure to take some of your questions and comments as well.
Let's get started. Let's get started with the Democratic Memo. This was huge news this weekend.
Huge news.
It dropped this weekend on Saturday. Kind of a weird time. I'm guessing the White House probably decided to release it then in order for it to be kind of pushed aside.
They didn't want it to be in the news cycle. They just wanted it to be during the weekend, so they were hoping people would miss it, which obviously didn't happen.
Yes, so basically this memo has been been talked about for a couple weeks now. Adam Schiff, the ranking member of the House Intel Committee, is the one leading this memo and wrote the memo. But the White House rejected it and said that there's too much in there that's going to give up their sources.
Well, basically they wanted certain things redacted, and they said that the FBI should review it and redact things. But it was really the White House playing a game. They probably wanted to try and...
They want to extend the length of time that the Nunes memo was out there without this being out there to delegitimize
So
it.
the conspiracy theory that Nunes tried spreading, that the FBI illegally got a FISA warrant, would continue to spread, when in reality they didn't actually illegally get a FISA warrant, because that would be impossible since the FISA courts actually determine what's legal and what's not legal.
Yeah, so let's get into what the Democratic Memo says. First off, it shows pretty much that the whole Nunes memo was a joke, and pretty much that the memo was basically a partisan hit job on the FBI.
Exactly.
Some of the biggest points here that the memo kind of showed the American public this weekend is the fact that 7 weeks prior to the dossier being received by the FBI, they were already surveilling Carter Page.
And that was due to George Papadopoulos' drunken night in the bar. And
yeah, so the whole premise that the dossier led to this illegal FISA warrant is totally thrown out now, because we all know that they were surveilling Carter Page prior to them even digging into the dossier.
Yeah, well, and then if you read farther into the Adam Schiff Democratic Memo, you'll see that while Devin Nunes tried claiming that the FBI tried hiding the fact that the Steele dossier was written for political reasons or written as a political document for opposition research, as opposed to what really happened is that the FBI told the FISA courts that, in fact, the dossier was written by Steele, who was doing it as political research. And it went into detail about some of this political research. So the courts actually did know that the Steele dossier was done as opposition research, and they still went ahead and granted the FISA warrant.
Okay, well, not only that, but basically a FISA warrant's good for 90 days. After 90 days, the FBI has to go back to the FISA court and get them to reinitiate the warrant.
Yeah.
If they want to continue to surveil Carter Page or whoever they were surveilling, they need to get a new warrant after 3 months or 90 days. So they did this. They did this 3 times, I believe.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just read a comment. I'm sorry.
They did this 3 times, and when they did this 3 times, each time they would have to have more evidence above and beyond what they took to the FISA court prior to that. So every 90 days that they went back to the FISA court, they had more and more evidence that Carter Page was acting as a foreign agent. So that in itself shows that Carter Page was almost certainly a foreign agent. So every 90 days, they went back to the FISA court, got the FISA judges to sign off on this warrant, and they continued to surveil Carter Page. Now, here's the other thing here. The 4 judges, the 4 FISA judges, were all appointed by Republican presidents.
Yep. Well, and so there goes the whole political bias thing that the right's trying to spread that, oh, it's the Democrats trying to investigate and illegally monitor Carter Page in order to get to the president. It's like Republicans as deep as you can go as far as this investigation goes. And now Trump appoints another Republican, Christopher Wray, to the FBI. And and now he doesn't want him there. It's just ridiculous, the notion that it's the Democrats that are illegally investigating Trump when you just look at everybody involved as all Republicans.
Yeah, so now that we have the Nunes memo pretty much thrown out in the garbage, it is garbage. There's nothing in it that actually shows that anything went on.
Unless you're Fox News or Devin Nunes himself.
Yeah. Okay. So the other key point that I want to bring up here was that there's a section of the memo. I'll actually read it to you. This is part of the Democratic Memo. Christopher Steele's reporting, which he began to share with an FBI agent, is blanked out, through the end of October 2016, played no role in launching the FBI's counterintelligence investigation into Russian interference and links to the Trump campaign. In fact, Steele's reporting did not reach the counterintelligence team investigating Russia's FBI headquarters until mid-September 2016, more than 7 weeks after the FBI opened its investigation, because the probe's existence was so closely held within the FBI. By then, the FBI had already opened sub-inquiries into blank individuals linked to the Trump campaign, blank and former campaign foreign policy advisor Carter Page. Now these blanks, so it's now confirmed that there's multiple individuals that were linked to the Trump campaign that the FBI was investigating in having dealt with Russia.
And it looks like there's a few names there that are blacked out.
Now some people on Twitter actually looked at the redaction and the size of the redaction, and they figured out that it's either 4, 5, or 9 individuals linked to the Trump campaign had contact with Russia that the FBI was investigating at that time. Now, judging from the space they give to list the individuals, I'm going to say it was probably 4 or 5. In addition, so 3 or 4 in addition to Carter Page. Now we know it was George Papadopoulos. The other 2, that's really anyone's guess. It could be Paul Manafort, it could be Rick Gates, it could be Jeff Sessions, anybody. It could be anybody.
And I'm sure we'll hear more about that at a later date. And it's an interesting note that Schiff kind of hesitated to agree that the redactions should be made, sort of inferring that it didn't really matter if those redactions were made. So I assume that these are individuals who we already are aware of.
So that makes me think that it's probably Papadopoulos, Gates, and Manafort. But we don't know for a fact.
Yeah, so, it basically just took Devin Nunes' memo and threw it in the trash. That's basically what Adam Schiff did. And that this is the reasoning why Trump didn't want the Democratic memo getting released, because he realized it would completely debunk the Devin Nunes memo.
And it kind of lends credence to the fact that something's fishy with Nunes. In fact, Howard Dean.
Yeah, he just said that he believes that Devin Nunes will go to prison.
Yeah, and it's funny because I made a tweet probably about 2 weeks ago saying the same thing. Before all is said and done, Nunes is probably going to wind up in prison, convicted on something or charged with something at least.
Well, innocent people don't act like how Devin Nunes is acting. They don't go out of their way to protect the president. They don't go out of their way to have secret meetings with the president in order to get your talking points for a memo that's supposed to basically show that the president's innocent. That's not how innocent people work unless they're colluding or conspiring with them. So I think there's a good chance that Devin Nunes, when all is said and done, could be brought into this entire conspiracy. At least obstruction of justice.
Now this is another interesting point coming about. The Republicans, there's actually, I believe, 6 Republicans on the House Intel Committee who are now saying that they don't want to investigate anything related to Trump's finances. And there's basically the Democrats in the House Intel Committee, led by Adam Schiff, are trying to set up interviews with multiple individuals connected to Deutsche Bank, connected to several other finance firms and individuals connected to the campaign. And the GOP, the Republicans within the House Intel Committee, are now saying that they do not want to set up these interviews. They don't want to go down that road because it has nothing to do with the Russia investigation.
We know what the real reason is. The real reason is that they know if they go down that road, they're going to find dirt on Trump. They know they're going to probably find criminal acts that he's taken part in, whether it's related to the Russia investigation, whether it's related to his presidency, or just his previous business ties, which in and of itself could put him in hot water.
Yeah, basically the Republicans say that they're calling it a fishing expedition, and it's something in Mueller's purview. They say Democrats are saying it's essential to the Russian investigation, which. I mean, how isn't it essential? If the whole investigation is looking at a possible connection between Trump and the Russians and a possible quid pro quo, that would involve finances.
In order to find out if Trump is actually laundering money through Russia from Russia, you're going to need to see where his finances were, where they're at, where that money he was earning was coming from. Was any of this money laundered? Did it go through Russia? Did it go to Russia? It's like you need to investigate this stuff, and I'm sure Robert Mueller is. So whether the House actually gets to investigate it or not, it's not really going to make much of a difference, since Robert Mueller's looking as deep as you possibly can into this with subpoena after subpoena on different banks, etc. You know.
Yeah, and I don't want to minimize what Adam Schiff is doing in the House, or Mark Warner in the Senate, but really this House and the Senate investigations, they're just sideshows. Right now, it doesn't seem like that they're going to actually lead anywhere productive, at least not until way after Mueller's.
Well, I think what it can be used for is to kind of justify Mueller's actions and to sort of back up whatever he finds.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, and if there is an impeachment, those investigations will play into some of the evidence that's in this. If the House votes to impeach and it's headed to the Senate, they're going to use that evidence from both the Senate and the House Intel committees for trial. To try to convict.
Yeah, but do you really think the House or Senate are going to find anything that Mueller has?
No,
I don't see that happening.
Absolutely not.
No. So what else was in the memo? I know there's a lot of points in there. I think it's important to also note that the Democratic Memo shows that the FBI actually did tell the FISA courts that Steele was using was performing opposition research, and that it was paid for by the opposition party as well as opposing Republicans. I think that's a big thing because Devin Nunes tried saying in his version of the memo that the FBI never actually told the courts that it was opposition research.
Yeah,
and it's ridiculous. It's like the Republicans are acting like because it's opposition research, it should be thrown out. There's no law against that. No. If a crime was committed, it doesn't matter who finds the crime. If it's evidence of a crime, or if it's hearsay about a crime, it's still just as admissible, whether it's opposition research or independent research.
Well, and just remember, this whole thing started out from the Washington Free Beacon, who was working for Marco Rubio at the time. I believe. So it's like it was started out as a Republican project, and the Democrats just took it on. Well, Steele was concerned enough that he passed it on to the FBI and John McCain.
Yeah, and there are some issues with Steele as far as him talking to the media while he was talking to the FBI. I think that caused some concern by the FBI, and they sort of brushed him aside a little bit because of that.
Well, the reason that Steele began talking to the media is because he knew the FBI was sitting on this information. Basically, James Comey comes out a week prior to the election and talks about Hillary Clinton and the whole, brings back the whole email scandal again, and they don't mention a single word about Trump. They were actually asked if they were investigating not the president, but candidate Trump related to Russia, and they said no. So Steele hears this, and he's like, the FBI's not doing anything. I'm gonna talk to the media.
Yeah, in Steele's mind, he's probably under the assumption that the FBI is actually helping Trump. So he wanted to get the word out, so he went to the media, even though he had already talked to the FBI.
Yeah, and I believe he also gave it to John McCain.
Yeah.
Should we move to the next
so
topic?
if anybody has questions or comments, you can either leave them in the chat box, but that kind of moves fast, so we don't see them really. So you can tweet at us with the hashtag Krassenstein Live, like you see up in the corner over there. Yeah, just tweet with that hashtag, and we'll try and handle some of the comments. I'll answer a few, and then we'll move on to the next topic.
Steele is an American hero, someone said, and I absolutely agree. I think when all is said and done, Christopher Steele is going to be shown to be a true hero. He's not even American.
Yeah, I agree. Now, Suzu Higgins says on Twitter, isn't the hyping up of the Nunes memo and trying to suppress the minority party memo, like so many narratives by this administration, trying to spread disinformation and hope enough people will believe the lie, since many don't fact-check or revisit claims? And I think that's absolutely exactly what both the House Republicans and the White House are trying to do here, and that's one of the reasons why the Democratic memo was kind of pushed off, and they kind of tried to take as long as possible to release it, so that the Republican memo will be all that anybody sees, and that'll absorb into people's minds, and people kind of forget about it, but have the idea of Devin Nunes' memo in their head, and then the Democrat memo comes out, and
it's information overload. They just want to put out as much seemingly false information as possible in order to just confuse people, and it's working. It's working great.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you have a million websites posting about the Nunes memo. You have the Nunes memo, the hot topic of the week, the month, and then the Democratic memo isn't even released.
And average people who don't really follow politics or haven't really been following Trump-Russia or this investigation, they look at there's two memos coming out, both from the House of Representatives, the United States Congress. And when you see something coming from Congress, you're going to be apt to believe it. You're going to have the tendency to believe it for its face value. So all these people believe Devin Nunes' memo, and then some of them might see Schiff's memo, or they may not. And so it's like, and then even if they do see Nunes or Schiff's memo, they still have Nunes' memo ingrained on their head.
Yeah, and they had the doubt. They had the doubt already in their mind. And the gap between the Nunes memo and the Schiff memo was so long. I think it was 3 weeks that it was kind of out of people's minds, and they probably don't even realize what the Schiff memo is anymore.
Well, and then all the people who are watching Fox News and the people on the far right, they're not even going to read Schiff's memo. They're going to just read Nunes' memo and block out the Schiff memo because they feel like, it's a Democratic lie. So it helps. It's helping Trump's cause, having Devin Nunes come out and lie and obstruct justice.
Yep.
I'll get some more questions. I believe that's it on Twitter.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions, do the tweet with hashtag Krassenstein Live, and we'll get to them. Maybe we should move on to the next subject that we.
Sure.
What was it that you were?
Let's see here. We could touch on the Supreme Court DACA ruling today. The Supreme Court today basically said that they're not going to listen to appeals on the White House's or the Trump administration's DACA appeal. They're not going to listen.
Well, basically, the White House pretty much set a deadline of March 5th, where after that date they can start deporting DACA recipients. Mm-hmm. And a court in Northern California pretty much said that they can't do that. Trump the next move is to appeal to the Ninth Circuit Court. Instead of doing that, Trump, who isn't a fan of the Ninth Circuit Court, decided to go right up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court has said that it's not their decision right now, and they sent it back to the Ninth Circuit Court. Now, what makes this so awesome is that most legal scholars believe that it's going to take a while, and it's probably going to be a full year before there will be a decision on this. So now DACA members, Dreamers, now have probably a year before they have to be concerned about it. And another point that I think I should make is that now this kind of shifts the burden off of Democrats in Congress.
Yeah, definitely.
They can kind of take on gun control without worrying about, March 5th is around the corner, we got to protect DACA. And now they don't have to do that immediately.
I'm sure it'll be interesting to see if Trump tweets about anything in relation to DACA. He actually hasn't tweeted for something like 2 days now. He's done a few retweets, but he hasn't made any tweets. My guess is that he's pretty stressed about something.
Yeah, and something I found pretty kind of ironic is that today, after that decision by the Supreme Court to send it back to the Ninth Circuit, the White House spokesman, Raj Shah, said, "The DACA program, which provides work permits and myriad government benefits to illegal immigrants en masse, is clearly unlawful." Now think about that for a second. The last 3 weeks, Trump has been saying, it's the Democrats' fault that DACA is not being renewed. It's the Democrats. I want DACA. I'm doing everything to keep DACA, but it's the Democrats. But now his White House is saying, DACA is illegal. So what is it?
Yeah. Well, you know that it's not the Democrats' fault. I mean, if it was up to the Democrats, everything would stay as it is. It wouldn't. They would. Like Trump's the one
wouldn't be that
deadline.
deadline.
Yeah, exactly. Trump's the one that's forcing this issue, so it's his fault. It's just really crazy that Trump actually thinks he can get away with this.
Yeah, I just find it remarkable that the White House is saying that it's illegal, DACA's illegal, when President Trump is saying basically, I'm a fan of DACA as long as you give me the wall. So he's a fan of it even though it's illegal, as long as he gets his stupid wall for $25 billion.
Yeah, it's disgusting. It really is. Let's see. There's another Krassenstein live comment on Twitter. I'll get to that in a second. Pushka asks, any idea on who the 3 sealed indictments are for in the UK? Farage?
I'm not too familiar.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with the UK indictments either.
Yeah, are we missing something, or is this something that's... Sorry. Is this something we're missing, or is this something that's just a rumor right now? Because I've read rumors about this. I've read rumors that there's charges pending in the UK, but I haven't seen any hard evidence of this. So I don't want to kind of go off on a tangent on something that's not actually factual yet, or what will happen will be called fake news.
I haven't heard of anything factual in relation to the UK indictments yet, and we shouldn't speculate until there's something more solid out there.
Yeah, I see some comments saying I heard about it, but I've heard about it, but I haven't seen anything actually proving it right now.
I've heard about Hillary Clinton running a pornography ring in the basement of a pizza parlor, so, heard about it thing, I'm not going to buy until I actually see facts.
Yeah, it's nice to think that maybe Farage or someone like that is going to get indicted. What we do know is that there were several politicians in the UK who Manafort allegedly paid off in order to take a pro-Ukrainian stance. So that's definitely who these they were described as high-up politicians. So who they were, we don't know. You can only guess, but I don't think there's been any indictments or charges yet.
No, but it wouldn't surprise me if there's some Brexit connections here. There already are some connections with Natalia Veselnitskaya and several others.
WikiLeaks and all that.
Yeah, so it wouldn't surprise me one bit if there's several United Kingdom indictments. I know Rob Goldstein, who was actually at the Trump Tower meeting, actually left right after that meeting to go to the Brexit vote, or go to London during the Brexit vote, and then basically came back to America. That's some research that Brian and I discovered several months ago. And several of the other people sort of in that whole meeting or related to that whole meeting also did did the same thing.
There was a lot of traveling back and forth to London
yeah.
to New York, London to New York.
And they seem to want to be there for the Brexit vote, whether that has anything to do with it or it's just a coincidence.
Yeah, the mainstream media didn't really report too much on that, but most of those people in the meeting, or a lot of those people connected to that Trump Tower meeting, were going back and forth, back and forth. And the only way you know that is by checking out their social media accounts and their friends' social media accounts, and you can see that they were actually posting from New York, London, New York, London.
Yeah, Brian and I did a lot of research on social media accounts from these individuals who were at the Trump Tower meeting, and it was interesting what we found. We did a few articles for IR.net several months ago.
Yeah, and these travelings back and forth coincided with the Brexit vote. So that's something
which is interesting, and you know that Putin had wanted to influence the Brexit vote. That's something that's pretty much a known fact right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Something else we could talk about is Trump's comments about the Parkland shooting.
Yeah, so today Trump actually, I shouldn't even laugh. Today Trump came out and said that if he was in Parkland for the Stoneman Douglas school shooting, he would have ran into the building unarmed if he didn't have a gun. And he was outside, he would have run into the building unarmed to try and save these kids' lives. And I don't believe it. And do you believe it?
I mean, I don't want to say what's going through his mind, but in my mind, I don't think anyone can really say what they do in that situation until they're in that situation. So much goes through your mind, unless you're a professional SWAT team member or you're highly trained military. I don't think you really know how you're going to react in a situation like that until you're in a situation. I'm sure so much goes through your mind. Oh no, I'm going to leave my kids behind, or I'm like much goes through your mind that I couldn't say what I'd do in that situation.
Well, here's the kicker. If you do believe that Trump would have went into the building unarmed, risked his life, probably would have gotten killed trying to save these kids' lives, let's go back about a decade. And Trump actually was on Howard Stern, and he told Howard Stern about an 80-year-old man who was at a Mar-a-Lago party. And this man fell and hit his head, or I believe it was his head, and started bleeding, basically bleeding out and dying. And Trump looked at him, and he basically said, "I can't touch this man." I can read some comments that Trump made to Howard Stern when this actually happened. He said, "I was at Mar-a-Lago, and we had this incredible ball, the Red Cross ball, in Palm Beach, Florida. And we had the Marines, and the Marines were there. And it was terrible because all these rich people, they're there to support Marines, but they're really there to get their picture in Palm Beach Post. So you have all these really rich people, and man, about 80 years old, very wealthy man, a lot of people didn't like him. He fell off the stage," Trump said. So what happens is this guy falls off right on his face, hits his head, and I thought he died. And you know what I did? I said, "Oh my God, that's disgusting." And I turned away, Trump said. But it wasn't because of his horror at the man. Okay. Trump said, "I couldn't, you know. He was right in front of me. I turned away. I didn't want to touch him. He was bleeding all over the place. I felt terrible. You know, beautiful marble floor, didn't look like it. It changed color, became very red. And you have this poor guy, 80 years old, laying on the floor, unconscious, and all the rich people are turning away. Oh my God, this is terrible. This is disgusting. And you know, they're running away. Nobody wants to help the guy. His wife is screaming. She's sitting right next to him, and she's screaming. And then he basically says that he didn't help. He couldn't do it.
He was disgusted.
He was disgusted by the blood. So do you really think Trump would have run into Stoneman Douglas, who saved his kids' lives, without a gun? No.
Well, he avoided Vietnam. He said he had bone spurs. I mean,
yeah,
that's another judge of character right there. I mean, in the end, nobody can say what he do. You can only guess.
Yeah, nobody can really say what they do in a situation like
that.
I'd
like to think I'd go in, but in
that situation, I know if I was in that situation without a gun, I absolutely wouldn't have gone in. No, I would have been trying to get the police there as soon as possible. if I was an armed security guard, I'd like to say I would have went in to help.
Well, yeah, I mean,
But-
if you're going to be an armed security guard,
that's
if you're
your
going to
job.
take that job, you should be prepared. But
But when you hear like 60 rounds per minute going off in a school, and you have a handgun, and you have a family to take care of, that's a hard decision to make. And if you're a security guard, you should probably be doing your job, but you can't blame someone until you're in that same situation and act differently.
yeah, I agree. So we got any questions here? I got a Twitter comment. This is from Function Shift. The Dem memo suggests several campaign officials were already under investigation, but most were indicted separately. Do you think any potential indictments against current administration officials will be filed separately or together like Manafort and Gates? Separately, I'm not exactly sure what they mean by separately because the Papadopoulos, the Flynn, they were all separate.
I think there's going to be multiple additional indictments filed,
and I don't think they're all going to be combined.
They're going to probably overlap in some ways, but they're not going to. It's not going to be one giant indictment. They're going to be separate.
Yeah, no, I would not rule out seeing another indictment that might include Manafort, Gates, and somebody else. It could be Manafort, Gates, Don Jr., Manafort, Gates, Trump.
Yeah, they're most likely they're going to overlap, but you're not going to. It's not going to be one giant indictment that's going to cover everything.
He doesn't want to give his hand away.
Exactly.
He's slowly picking apart the whole criminal organization if that's what it's going to be, and to do so, he's not going to wait. He's going to do it slowly, flip witnesses, get more information, and then go after other people. Which it seems like he might be close to be done trying to flip witnesses for further evidence. He probably has enough. Hope Hicks would be interesting, especially if he.
Well, if you want to finish your...
No, go ahead.
I think an interesting person here is Jared Kushner. I think he could be somebody that could be flipped, like down the line, though. But I think Trump wants to... I think Mueller wants to get as close to Trump as he possibly can before he actually goes after Kushner. Because he knows there's a good chance that Kushner wouldn't flip. But from what I'm reading, people say that Kushner might actually throw Trump under the bus.
I've seen the same comments. I've heard that there's kind of a rift developing there, and that they could both turn on each other.
I think that might be partly due to the whole John Kelly, Jared Kushner security clearance issue, where Trump basically said, "I'm going to stay out of this. I'm going to let John Kelly handle this, and if he thinks Kushner shouldn't have security clearances, that's up to him." And I think that might have pissed Jared Kushner off. It's interesting because he's married to Ivanka Trump, so you got to wonder what the relationship between Ivanka and President Trump was.
Yeah, whose side would Ivanka take? Kushner or Trump? Kushner or her father?
Well, I'd have to say Kushner.
The father of her kids.
Yeah, I can't see her siding with her father, but who knows? You don't know. This family is a little weird.
Somebody said, "Do you think Donald Trump is scared?" And I think it's pretty evident that he's scared based on his tweets the other day. Last week's tweets were kind of crazy. I think he has to be scared. I think he's scared, but he also has a weird sense of confidence to him that he
I
thinks
agree.
he can get out of it. I think he thinks he's smarter or he's more powerful than he really is. And although he's scared, I think he's more scared for how he's going to have to handle it.
Yeah.
If Kushner's indicted or Don Jr.'s indicted, he's probably going to be pulling out a pardon. And once he pardons, then things really get crazy.
Yeah, I think we're going to start seeing things move faster, but I say it every week, I still don't think that we're going to see a referral from Mueller until sometime at the end of this year or beginning of next year.
Yeah, I don't know what the timeline's going to be, but it's going to be a little while, I think. Somebody asked, "Do you believe Kushner and Ivanka will soon turn on the president to save themselves?" That's what we were just talking about. I think that I don't think they're gonna be key witnesses in all this. I think they're gonna hold back. Whether Kushner does give up information for a more lenient sentence, perhaps.
Well, you got to keep in mind that spouses cannot be forced to testify against their spouse. So Melania, she's not going to play any role in this unless she specifically wants to, which I don't foresee happening. But technically, Mueller could subpoena both Ivanka and Jared Kushner to testify against Trump if he desired. He couldn't subpoena Ivanka to testify against Jared, or Jared to testify against Ivanka. He might be able to subpoena them, but they don't have to actually go through.
Yeah. Somebody asked if Trump's indicted before his family, will he have the ability to issue a pardon? And no, he wouldn't. But he's not going to be indicted. Basically, it would be an impeachment. He can't be indicted until he's thrown out of office.
Well, there's arguments that there's some people say he can, some people say he can't. But nobody's going to know for sure unless Mueller was actually did indict him, and a court would have to decide if it was
go to the
within the
Supreme
bounds of the
Court.
Constitution.
And I personally don't see Mueller indicting him because he doesn't want it going to the Supreme Court, because he could lose. And it's very possible he could lose. Past legal scholars have written papers about this, and the Supreme Court would go based on other I guess, legal opinions. And there's a good chance that they would not allow an indictment. There's also a chance that they would, but does Mueller want to go down that road, indict the president, and then pretty much have his whole case thrown out? I don't think he would. I think he'd hope for the impeachment and then the indictment.
Well, at the same time, from everything I read and everyone I talk to, they all say that Mueller likes playing by the rules, and that leads me to believe that he's not going to try and indict Trump. He's going to provide if he finds crimes committed, he's going to provide a referral to both the Senate and the House of Representatives, and leave it up to them to vote to impeach and then throw Trump out of office. Once Trump's impeached, then the whole story changes, and an indictment could be filed. But then there's also the aspect of state crimes. Like we've talked about this in past episodes. State crimes, I believe, can be indicted. Am I correct there?
I still don't know. I don't know if a state can indict him.
I know the pardon doesn't apply for state crimes.
That's correct.
But I'm not sure about the indictment. Again, I think it's one of those things where
there is no
precedent. There's no precedent, so there's nothing to go on, and it would be up to the courts to decide.
Yeah, when prosecutors and investigators determine their plan of action, they usually look at past cases. And in this case, there are no past cases. So there's no precedent, and it's kind of shaky ground. They don't know what way to go. I have full confidence in Robert Mueller. I think he's incredibly smart. I think he knows what he's doing, obviously. And I think he's going to take the route that he thinks is going to ultimately pay off the most for the United States.
Exactly.
And he's not going to jeopardize the whole investigation by doing something he thinks could backfire. Somebody said Paul Ryan won't do anything, and that's all the reason you vote Paul Ryan out in November.
I think he runs. I'm hearing a lot of. At first, didn't he say he wasn't going to run for re-election?
There were rumors. I don't know if it was. Right now, it appears he's running.
There's actually a pretty good candidate that's opposing him though in Wisconsin. So hopefully,
Randy Bryce.
Yeah,
Randy Bryce, is it?
I believe Randy Bryce. But hopefully he can actually take up some of those votes, and a lot of people are kind of turning against Paul Ryan. Even Trump supporters kind of don't like him that much.
Yeah, well, it all goes back to Ryan not endorsing him at first and all that. Somebody said, I can see Trump doing a Nixon and resigning and having Pence pardon him. I don't see it. I don't see him giving up. I don't think Trump's the type of person to just roll over like that. And sure, it's possible he could resign and have Pence pardon him, but then he's guilty.
Well, at the same time, I've listened to several constitutional attorneys speak on this matter about pardons, and a lot of people have the assumption that pardons are unlimited and pardons cannot be challenged, and that's not really the case. Pardons, if a pardon is made and that pardon is deemed to be basically obstruction of justice or not a good reason. There's not a good reason for the pardon. That can actually be overturned by the courts, and I fully expect if any pardons in Trump Russia are made by Trump or Pence or whomever it is, I think there's going to be some legal challenges.
Well, especially if those pardons are somehow relating back to the case that he's being charged with, that makes it so much worse. For instance, when who was it? It was Ford who pardoned Nixon.
Yeah.
Ford didn't have any connection to that whole cover-up and crime. So him pardoning Nixon is different than Pence pardoning Trump, because it's pretty clear that Pence had some involvement here. Who knows how much?
Well, he was the head of the transition team.
Yeah,
so the transition teams, the transition teams, what's at the focus of Trump Russia. So it's almost impossible for Pence not to know what was going on if Mueller finds crimes.
And somebody here said that you can't pardon to cover up a crime, and that's absolutely right. And that's kind of the point we're trying to make, is that it's a whole different situation than the whole Nixon thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there will be so many legal challenges and so many Supreme Court hearings if something like this happened.
Yeah, and I've seen a couple people write, do you think America can survive a constitutional crisis? And
I do.
Yeah, I do too. I think that there's different levels of constitutional crises.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard other aspects of this whole progression be referred to as constitutional crisis already. So, as a constitutional crisis already. So, I mean, what is the definition of constitutional crises?
Yeah, and I think that regarding this whole court case, whether it's going to be a court case or not, whether there's pardons that shouldn't be performed, I think that the judiciary system will eventually prevail, and I think that's what's protecting America more than anything right now. You saw it today with the whole DACA, the whole DACA thing, and also there was another ruling in Manhattan, which basically said that an employer can't discriminate based on sexual preference.
Yeah, well, I mean, what it comes down to is if laws were broken by Trump, he's going to have to pay the price. If perhaps Mueller doesn't find anything, or perhaps he finds stuff, but the evidence isn't there to basically convict him, and he gets off. Overall, I think the system's going to work, and if Trump committed crimes, he'll be held accountable for them. I really do. I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. Somebody asked, do you think a tax cut will make a difference in the November elections? And no, I don't think it's going to really make much of a difference.
Well, with that said, this is kind of off topic, but I don't know if you guys seen today, there's a research report released. I forget who, some institution released it. I think like the Urban Institution or something. They released a report that says that healthcare costs are expected to go up by 18% next year due to the changes that the GOP made. So people, one of the main reasons why people were against Obama was because of rising healthcare costs. And Trump's taken over, and healthcare costs have increased 18%.
Meanwhile, Trump, I think just 3 days ago on Fox News, his interview, he said that the health insurance prices are all going to drop, and it's like complete lie. He has nothing to back that up.
And, well, he's saying this because he realized that most people aren't going to see the spike until after the midterms. So he's going to use that to kind of get votes in the midterms, and then people won't realize it until 2019. And by the time the next election is coming around in 2020, that will kind of be a thought that's been lost.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And something else, I just saw someone comment and say Democrats don't care about DACA. They absolutely do. Trump's the one that basically did not renew DACA. Trump's the reason why DACA recipients are pretty much in limbo right now. It's not Democrats, it's Trump.
If you really think that Democrats don't care about the Dreamers, is that what you're inferring, that they don't care about the Dreamers, or Is that what you're saying DACA is? I mean, there's two different things. Do you care about DACA as in, from the Republican point of view, you want these immigrants out? But from the Democratic point of view, you believe they deserve to stay here. So to say they don't care about DACA means they don't care about Dreamers, and that's the whole point of this whole argument, is that they care about Dreamers. They want them to stay, whereas Trump doesn't believe they should.
Well, Trump is saying that he'll add another 800,000 or a million.
Yeah,
Dreamers.
He's using it to basically blackmail Democrats into doing other things.
All right, so here's another point. Since we brought up healthcare and whether that's going to affect the election or not, or taxes, I'm sorry. One thing that this whole Supreme Court ruling today will likely do is drag the DACA argument past the election. So right now, we thought it was going to be March 5th was going to be the deadline. Now, it appears as if a deadline will now be in place probably after the election because of this Supreme Court ruling that sends it back to the Ninth Circuit. That's gonna be huge for 2018. I think it's gonna bring out a lot of legal immigrants to vote, and just as a protest vote.
Anybody else have questions or comments, feel free to leave them on Twitter with hashtag Krassenstein Live that you see up in the corner there. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter. You can see our names right underneath us and our Twitter handles. And follow our Periscope account so you're notified of these future videos.
Somebody just said if you report trolls as spam, you won't see their ignorance. I don't mind the trolls being in here. I like having different points of view. I like countering their arguments. If it's just all Democrats in here who are all same views as us, it makes it kind of a boring conversation, I feel. So yeah, I mean, if you disagree with us, post about it. I don't care. I mean, I see some of you guys posting about the whole raid of our house, which we totally showed you that nothing happened, and that we did nothing illegal. We were never charged with a crime. So you can keep posting that. I don't care. I mean, every one of our tweets you guys post like 10 times saying, we're criminals.
It's the Russian trolls. They're just, they try getting under your skin.
We're not criminals. Do a background check. We have no record. I think I got one speeding ticket in my life.
Alright, well, let's just move on from here. It's not even worth talking about that. So,
were there any other topics? Or
I mean, there's Stoneman Douglas and the stuff that's happening. There's a rally right now in Tallahassee going on. There's a bunch of students in Florida who walked out to participate. They're basically protesting assault rifles, which I think is a good thing to protest. I don't see a reason why the average Joe should be able to buy an assault rifle, especially somebody who's under the age of 21.
I've seen a couple things. You guys, I'm sure, are aware of Emma Gonzalez now. I thought something that was quite, not funny, but awesome is that she now has more followers than the NRA.
Yeah, she's approaching 1 million. She'll probably have 1 million by the end of the day. And that's from 10 days. She's been on Twitter for 10 days, whereas the NRA's been on Twitter for 10 years.
Yeah.
I think 9 or 10 years.
And she has almost 1 million followers. She's the 18-year-old from Parkland who has been speaking out a lot. Her and some of her classmates are really taking this thing to the next level, actually doing something about it, and I think it's refreshing. I was actually chatting with her a couple days ago, and this morning we wanted to get her on here and get her conversation in on this. She said she'd love to, but she's really busy. So, I mean,
we'll keep trying. Maybe one day when things settle down, we'll get her on the show.
I just think she's an awesome person, and I think that it's refreshing to see people her age get involved in politics like this. It's such a shame what she had to go through and her classmates, but I really think that she has to be super strong to be able to.
Oh yeah, you can tell by the way she handles herself.
No one should be able to buy an assault rifle, not former military, only SWAT.
That was a comment.
That was a comment we just got.
Brian's not thinking this.
Sorry. I think that the assault weapon ban from 94 to 2004, 2002.
Yeah.
I think that should be re-implemented. That's my personal opinion. I think there's probably, I mean, the assault weapon ban back then that Clinton signed into law, it categorized guns in several ways. An assault weapon basically had to have two specifications out of a list of multiple.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, there's no technical assault weapon. It's just they have to.
You can categorize it, and people keep saying this. People keep saying, "Oh, you can't say what an assault weapon is," but you can. You can make clarification about what the definition of assault weapon is, and you can get if you really want to, you could get those weapons out of gun stores, out of gun shows. It's just I don't see any reason why you need an AR-15. I'm not. If you have one, that's good for you. You can have one, but I don't see any reason why you need it.
Yeah. Besides, going to the range and shooting and.
Yeah. Okay. So you go to the range and shoot an AR-15. Does that take any skill? I've never shot one, but I would imagine that you can just go up there and pull the trigger and basically hit your target by just moving the gun back and forth.
Yeah. Keep pulling the trigger.
Yeah. It's like. There's no skill whatsoever. What about hunting? Okay, so you want to go out there and obliterate the animal you're hunting?
The whole purpose of hunting is
it's a sport. It's a skill.
Well, it's to kill the animal in one shot, not 30 shots.
Yeah, well, it's all about skill. It's like okay, say you play baseball. Say you play baseball, and you want to go out and play baseball, but you want to use a ball the size of this room instead of a little baseball this big. It's like it doesn't make it fun.
Is that? Yeah.
I mean, I can see some people like just the power of a gun like that, but at the same time, is that power just being able to say you shot an AR-15 or that you own an AR-15? Is that worth the risk that somebody's going to walk into a school and start shooting people with one? In my opinion, it's not. You're entitled to your own opinion, though.
Yeah. Somebody has chimed in. Do you guys think we should talk about the damage an assault rifle does? And actually, the last live feed we did last week, we actually discussed this a little bit and how I read a few articles about it, and basically the exit wound can be the size of a baseball, whereas you shoot somebody with a handgun, the exit wound's usually no larger than a quarter. So one doctor referred to what happens if you get shot in the liver. And they compared it to if you were to take a Jello mold and just drop it on the floor from 10 feet up.
Well,
So
that's the thing. It's like the same thing. Like people talk about banning AR-15s. I think there's certain types of ammo that should be banned too. It's like, do we need ammo that can do that much damage?
well,
If somebody breaks into your house and you shoot them with a gun, it's probably going to stop them no matter how damaging that ammo is.
it's almost as if we should ban the ammunition used within these guns rather than the guns themselves.
Yeah, I agree.
Because the guns themselves, if you own an AR-15, the government can't get you to turn it in, but you can run out of ammo. Like the gun itself isn't going to run out, but the ammo runs out. So unless you're hoarding ammo, you're not going to. You're not going to have the ability to shoot it for the next 100 years.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know.
There'll be people who just make their own ammo.
Yeah, there's going to be
sell
ways
on the
around
black market, but I mean at the same time, that's an extra step that somebody has to go. Is go to the black market, go through these back channels, go in the dark web in order to buy this stuff. Whereas if you outlaw it, so you can't sell in gun stores, can't sell at gun shows, it's going to be harder to get. And somebody like the guy that shot up the school in Stoneman Douglas, he may not have been able to obtain that ammo, or maybe he wouldn't have wanted to waste his time trying to obtain that ammo.
Yeah, and it's crazy because the NRA and the right, they all say, oh, but this, but that, you can get around it this way, you can get around it that way. The whole point isn't to block everybody in anything, it's to make it more difficult. Sure, you could 3D print the lower receiver of one of these guns, which is the illegal part of the gun, and go out and fire. But do you know how much trouble you have to go through to download the design, buy a 3D printer, print it out that with materials that actually function? It just puts another step in there.
Well, let's okay. You have that argument. These gun owners, they say that you can still get around the laws, and if you want to shoot up a school, you can still do it. Well, what about drug laws? If you want to do drugs, you can still get a hold of drugs, whether they're legal or not legal. But we still have laws that say you can't sell certain drugs, certain types of drugs. I mean, you go on the internet, you can Google it. how to make certain drugs to get high. You can get around every law. There's pretty much every law that there is. There's a way around the law in order to commit the crime you want to commit.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean we shouldn't have laws because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody said America needs to give up the right. America will never give up the right to have guns. That's fine, but no one needs 600 shots a minute.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for the Second Amendment. It's in our Constitution. Nobody's talking about getting rid of the Second Amendment. Nobody's specifically saying that in Congress or in the House, or in the Senate. Nobody's saying that.
Well, there's already so many weapons that are banned. I mean, what the NRA is acting like, oh no, once you ban these weapons, it's a slippery slope, and all weapons are going to be banned, and we're going to take away all the guns. But there's already numerous weapons that are banned. Automatic weapons are banned, for instance.
Yeah.
So it's that didn't become a slippery slope. That didn't turn into the removal of all guns. They're making all guns illegal.
Well, that was when the NRA actually their job was to protect people. They were to support the gun industry, but at the same time make sure the gun industry is safe. And now all of a sudden, I don't know, in the last 10 years maybe, it's become an organization that is as far to the right as possible, and they just want to. Their job is to say no to anything that attempts to regulate guns. Just like they're saying they don't want to reduce the age from 21 to 19 in order to buy an AR-15.
Yeah,
that's just ridiculous.
That's going to be interesting right there. That point right there, because the president has come out and said he's in favor of increasing the age of 21. Will he cave to the NRA?
He just had lunch with the NRA this weekend, so I'm assuming that they probably reached some sort of agreement where the NRA said, "Okay, we'll give you another $10 million next time, and you drop the whole age restriction." I guarantee you, we don't see Trump actually move forward in dropping the age or raising the age to buy.
It's all talk, and all he cares about. He just wants you to drag it out long enough so that people forget about it. The next event happens, whatever it is, maybe a war, who knows, and then everybody forgets about this whole incident, and that's not going to happen because the kids in Parkland aren't going to let it happen.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that all these kids are forming a huge social media presence, and that presence is going to last forever, and they're going to keep grinding this stuff into people's heads and into their followers' heads, and they're not going to drop stuff. They're going to boycott things. They're going to push for boycotts and marches and protests, and that's always going to be there. I mean, Emma Gonzalez is always going to have a million plus followers, and that number's going to grow.
And her friends can vote probably most of her friends can probably already vote. She's 18. She can vote, so she's going to influence these people like no other politician can, and these other kids are going to do the same thing.
Yeah, well, and if they can't vote this year for the midterms, they're going to be able to vote in 2020 when there's a ton of Senate seats, Congress is up for re-election again, and Trump's up for re-election, and that'll be a huge election, even bigger than the midterms. And that's when pretty much that entire generation that's in high school now will be very close to or of voting age.
Yeah. Somebody said presidents have been shot while being surrounded by armed security. Just saying, yeah. Take, for example, Ronald Reagan in 1981. March of 1981. He was shot, so were 3 of his aides, or 3 of his whoever, 3 people around him. And he was protected by Secret Service, multiple Secret Service agents with guns, and he was shot. So it's like, you can't say that whole point. Arming teachers isn't the way to go. I haven't spoken to one teacher yet who has said, without a doubt, that they are in favor of being armed.
I'm sure there's some. I'm sure there's a good amount of teachers that are okay with being armed in the school, and I'm sure there's some teachers who believe that they should be armed. But at the same time, I think if you were to take a poll of all the teachers in America, it would be overwhelmingly against. They'd be overwhelmingly against carrying guns into schools. And I think if you took a poll of all the high school students in America, it would be equally, if not more, overwhelming in favor of not having guns.
Well, the president says that he wants to arm, I think it's between, 10 and 40% of all teachers. And he says that's because 10 to 40% of teachers are gun adept, whatever that means. Basically, I'm guessing he means they have vast experience using weapons, and they're good enough shots to kill a gunman in a crowded space. That's by far not the case. It's estimated that 30% of Americans have guns. Now, out of this 30%, only 22% of those, 22% of women have guns, and 74% of teachers are women. So only a small sliver of teachers actually have guns, and then another 40% of those with guns have actually had any former training. So probably about 5% of teachers actually are gun adept, and he wants to arm 10 to 40%. It just shows that he doesn't even have a clue what he's talking about.
Well, and then there's, do you really trust all these teachers? Like, what if there's a teacher that's not all... Maybe there's a mentally ill teacher who isn't diagnosed. Do you really trust these teachers all to carry guns and not harm somebody in the school? Also, what about students that just come to the school and snap one day or get mad at somebody and they know that the teacher in that classroom has a gun in his holster and decides to take that gun from the teacher? It's like... Yeah, you're just going to run into other issues as well.
So many unimaginable consequences that could stem from this. That
I know I wouldn't want my son going to a school where the teachers are armed. On the other hand, armed security guards, I think I'd be for that. And they had to be very trained. I'd be for that. I'd be for hardening the schools through bulletproof windows, through having one entrance where there's metal detectors. I think stuff like that can work. And you have a guard at the metal detector.
It's a shame that we have to even consider putting metal detectors into our schools, though. It's just that shouldn't have to happen. I think there's other things that society can do where that doesn't have to happen, and other countries are doing it. We apparently aren't smart enough.
Yeah, well, but I made it. There's an interesting thing where Trump is basically targeting video games. And I'm not saying video games don't influence behavior, because I think it can to some degree. But there's an interesting stat that I posted on Twitter this morning. I think it's pinned on my Twitter account. In comparing the United States and Japan. In Japan, on average, every citizen spends about $96, I believe, per year on video games. In America, we spend about $63 per year on video games. So video games are about 50% more prevalent in Japan than the United States. However, in Japan, there's 6 people killed with guns per 10 million. 6 people per 10 million people every year. In the United States, there's 1,016 people per 10 million people every year. So that's almost 20 times as many people killed in the United States per year with guns. And video games are more prevalent by 50% in Japan. So, the common denominator here, or the only reason I can find is not mental illness either, because there's mentally ill people in Japan, is that Japan is extremely strict gun and sword rules or laws.
Yeah, and Trump and the NRA, they want to blame everybody but the gun, everything and everybody but the guns. He's blamed families, he's blamed parents, he's blamed classmates, he's blamed video games, movies. He's blaming everything but the gun. And yes, mental illness and the person is the number one responsible culprit in all this, but the gun is number 2.
Yeah, absolutely. This wouldn't have happened if somebody walked in with a handgun. I highly doubt he would have been able to kill 17 people with a handgun. If it was a knife, he wouldn't have been able to kill 17 people with a knife. It's a lot easier to stop somebody with a handgun than somebody with an AR-15. But of course the NRA and those on the far right just don't even want to talk about it, and it's just going to keep happening if there's nothing done about these rifles that can be classified as assault rifles. We're just going to see this happen again, and that's really unfortunate, I think.
Yeah. Let's switch topics here. Somebody keeps asking Emma Jean about the elections and how safe the 2018 elections are. I'm hoping that they're safe. I feel that there's not enough being done, but I also feel that I'm not a person who believes that they actually changed votes, but I do think it's possible that they could have somehow deleted voter rolls, which would be kind of the same as deleting votes.
I mean, if you can determine a demographic of people who are less likely to vote for President Trump and more likely to have voted for Hillary Clinton, you could actually remove this demographic's voter rolls. For instance, African Americans were probably more likely to vote for Hillary, so you could remove them from the voter rolls.
Or just Democrats.
Or Democrats. Yeah, exactly. You could remove Democrats from the voter rolls. Whether this happened or not, I'd like to think it didn't, but it's hard to say with certainty.
It's hard to say when you have the people who likely benefited from any interference unwilling to do anything because they want to keep benefiting from it. The one thing that's giving me hope is that all these congressional and Senate races, both in the state and these special elections, have been going to Democrats. That gives me some hope that at least it's not completely rigged.
I'm all for going back to paper ballots or having paper ballots as a backup system for the electronic machines. So if there is any question, there can be audits done and actually make sure that these votes are being tabulated correctly on the electronic voting machines. It's just it's the midterms are coming up too soon for this to actually get done, and the Republicans are against this.
Well, the Democrats.
It's like, how can you say you're against this as a Republican unless you think that you have a better chance of winning and your party has a better chance of winning by not securing the election?
Well, the Republicans, I think Schumer and Pelosi have actually proposed a $300 million bill, which would pretty much help every state switch over to paper ballots, and the Republicans simply aren't even voting on it. And that's scary, and it kind of makes you question
what
why.
reason do you have not to support securing our voting system, which is like one of the most precious things we have in our democracy? How can you not care about that? It's just baffling to me, and it makes me wonder about some things.
Yeah.
I'll take another comment on Twitter, the hashtag Krassenstein Live. Dougie Fresh, he watches like every one of our shows. Thank you, Dougie. Says, sorry to repeat, how do you guys feel about the polling from insert credible source here? Because if Trumpists agree with it, they'll say it's right. If they disagree with it, they'll say, oh, the polling said Hillary would win, blah, blah. And it's a fool's errand. Polling, the Rasmussen polls, which is a far-right organization that does these polls, it shows Trump's ratings way up there, like somewhere close to 50%, which I don't believe. Whereas CNN had a poll that came out today, and I think 35. Trump's approval rating was 35%. And ABC USA Today just had a poll that came out, I believe, yesterday that had Trump's ratings at 38%. I think that's closer to the reality here. But, I see what you're saying, where Republicans they favor the ones that they want to favor, and they don't favor the ones that show Trump. But at the same time,
both sides do that.
At the same time, I tweet, like today I tweeted the CNN poll. I haven't tweeted the Rasmussen poll, so I'm guilty of the same thing. But again, I don't really trust the Rasmussen one. But then again, who am I to say which ones are trustworthy?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of scary in that we can't revert back to the polls after an election and say, well, the poll said this, because clearly they're not reliable. But are they not reliable because something fishy happened? We don't know that.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, at the same time, you got to take the polls with a grain of salt because it's not the actual election. But I think we can if you just look at all the polls together, you can kind of see obviously Trump's approval rating is less than 50%. I mean, it's anybody who says otherwise, they're fooling themselves.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that I think we can wrap it up. Thanks for tuning in. We'll probably try and do another one of these live shows, probably maybe the end of the week, maybe Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. It really depends on what kind of news is out there and what kind of schedule we have.
Yeah, I mean, if something breaks tomorrow, we might want to jump on and cover it. Don't forget to follow us on Periscope. That way you're notified when we go live. You can also follow us on Twitter. You can see our Twitter handles right below us and right below him. And
yeah,
like I said,
in the future, we want to try and get some guests.
I think we'll probably have some congressional candidates on the show.
Yeah, like I said, we tried getting Emma Gonzalez. She's incredibly busy. I mean, she's all over the place, so I totally understand her not wanting to be on a show that gets 50,000 views or whatever. And I mean, she's been through so much. I'm not going to push it on her. Definitely not. I think we'll probably try and get some, like Ed said, some congressional candidates. Perhaps some of the Twitter personalities you guys might be familiar with.
If you guys have any requests of who you'd like to see us bring on the show, feel free to send us a direct message on Twitter or just tweet it to #Krassenstein Live, or you can email me. My email is on my Twitter account. I know you can't DM me unless I follow you, so that might impede you from DMing me. So just send me an email. And although I don't respond to all emails, I do read them all. So
yeah, same with me. Like, I get a lot of direct messages. I try to respond to a lot of them. A lot of them I just don't. I don't have the time to respond to them all. I do read them all. So if you're sending me something, I'm definitely reading it. I just might not respond to it, and that's nothing against you.
Yeah. So thanks again, guys, and have a good afternoon.